The content of this podcast is solely for entertainment purposes. Its subject matter caters to open-minded individuals with a natural curiosity for conspiracy theories. It's important to note that the views and opinions expressed in the podcast are not necessarily those of the hosts or any other contributors. It's intended for a mature audience, and listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to In Plain Sight. Our mission is to challenge conforming beliefs,
unlock enslaved minds,
and be a beacon of courage, reminding all to question everything. The topic of our first episode is going to be part of an ongoing series. This is a topic that has intrigued multitudes with their eerily accurate, almost prophetic accounts of things that had not yet come to pass.
The Simpsons conspiracy has it all. Corruption, science and technology, occult, secret societies, and some even say that Matt Groening himself is a 33rd degree Mason. Today we're going to talk about The Simpsons episode Marge in Chains, which debuted in 1993. It is episode 21 of season 4. This episode may have predicted the COVID outbreak of 2020.
The first thing I want to say is, holy crap. When we started researching this particular subject, I didn't expect to find so much data, so much evidence that would suggest that this could even be possible. Literally from start to finish, it seemed like every new scene hid new clues. So how we're going to do this, there's clues that specifically we feel relate to COVID or the potential prediction of it. And then there's other clues that we feel are going to be important depending on what direction you want to take as far as how you feel, what you believe as a result. So let's dive right in. When the episode switches to Osaka, Japan, there's a warehouse. Workers in the warehouse are packaging juicers, one of which Homer had ordered from an infomercial. One of the workers is clearly sick. He actually tells his co-worker that he has the flu and please don't tell the supervisor. As they're packaging Homer's juicer, the guy coughs into it and the germs you can see are floating around the box. They seal it and ship it off to Homer.
So, Osaka, Japan, do you think that's why later in the episode they coined the illness the Osaka flu?
I think that's exactly why.
Do you remember during COVID when a certain somebody called it the Chinese flu? From China. China. So, 6 to 8 weeks later, Homer opens this package with his new juicer. A few other characters have also ordered the same juicer. As they open this package, the germs jump out and they infect these characters. So I also noticed that one of the characters that was infected was Principal Skinner. But it was kind of a strange little setup. He brought the juicer to his elderly mother and then opened the box. And then that infected him. That really reminds me of during the height of COVID how they were telling us, don't visit the elderly. Do you guys remember when people were unable to visit their grandparents? And they couldn't see their grandparents. People were saying that they were inventing shields to go give the elderly hugs and weren't allowed inside nursing homes. It's all too familiar.
Yeah, and people couldn't even visit their loved ones in hospitals. Some people took their last breaths alone. It's horrible.
Yeah, I really did not agree with that at all.
So at 5 minutes 52 seconds into the episode, the mayor's giving a press release, and he's promising the people that he's right there with them. They're going to get through this, and it's a fake set. He's actually in Jamaica. We know that because a Jamaican guy walks through the set playing the steel drum. Right behind him, you can see on the seal for what's representing his town, extremely corrupt. So that was definitely something that stuck with me.
You know what also stuck with me was his speech. How it was saying that we're all in this together. Eerily familiar.
Yeah, I heard that before too. So it proceeds. The townspeople are kind of up in arms. They're desperate. They are just like everything that we witnessed with COVID. Kind of that herd mentality chaos, and Dr. Hibbert is at the top of his balcony. It was straight out of Dr. Frankenstein's monster, trying to console the people, but then lets them know that there is nothing he can give them that would not be a placebo. Now that was strange to me, especially because here's an American doctor, and the way Western medicine has that affinity for profits, you would think he at least would have offered them something, but instead he said there is nothing he can do.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Normally he would just write them some kind of prescription and move on with his day. The people heard this about the placebo and they got really desperate. Some of them acted like they didn't know what placebo meant. One woman yells, "I bet they're in the van." There's a van in the back of the scene. They run over to the van, and in the back of this van is a crate of killer bees. They shake the van around, the crate falls out, the bees go crazy and start flying everywhere. One man takes it upon himself to take one of the bees, place it in his mouth, and eat it. He says, "I'm cured." Ouch. And I wouldn't think that that would have anything to do with COVID at all, but I decided to Google that anyway because it was a very standout scene for me. And what I found, just with a quick Google search, bee venom reduces susceptibility to COVID, which I thought was crazy, but I found a couple of peer-reviewed studies on the internet that backed this claim up.
That is crazy. One of the many times during the episode when I said, that is crazy. At first, when I saw the killer bees, I was feeling like it was a murder hornet type of connection, because I remember at almost exactly the same time as COVID, the murder hornets were kind of a problem, and they were taking out a lot of beehives. A lot of beekeepers lost their livelihoods as a result. But now learning that there is a connection and the bee venom actually helped in the fight against COVID, now it's just, hair on the back of my neck standing up.
Yeah, that's a little interesting. I didn't have murder hornets on my bingo card for that year, and yet there they were. As the episode moves on, it opens on a scene in which Marge is attempting to take care of the sick children and her sick husband. She is the only one well enough to be sent out to the store. So she goes out to the Quickie Mart, hoping to grab a couple of supplies, including some aspirin. While she's walking down this aisle, she becomes really overwhelmed with how much responsibility she has back at the house. And in doing so, she places a bottle of bourbon in her pocket without thinking about it. She goes to the front and asks if they have aspirin. So Apu brings out what he says is aspirin, but suspiciously to me looks like a multi-shot vial.
Absolutely. And as someone who did allergy shots for years when I was a kid, I'm allergic to everything outside. I know what a vial looks like, and I know what an aspirin bottle and ibuprofen bottle look like because I'm a lifelong martial artist as well. So in my opinion, there's no way that was an aspirin bottle. That was certainly a vial.
Right, and he charges her $24.95 for this bottle of aspirin, in which he says it's been tampered with, but that's why it's so cheap.
So price gouging under the guise of it being almost free, almost like you don't have a choice in the matter. That sounds familiar too. So the police chief and the mayor eventually in the episode, they're in a steam room and they're talking kind of behind closed doors. It's the same scenario we've seen 1,000 times in Hollywood. We've heard all the stories of the politicians, discussing things behind closed doors and probably things they shouldn't be talking about. But this also kind of resonated with me because I remember that those kind of rumors were going around regarding COVID around that time, specifically in California and New York.
Sometime later, we see a group of people gathered in front of the mayor at one of the new city parks, and they're about to unveil a statue. They had ordered a statue of President Lincoln, and for whatever reason, President Lincoln was not available. So when they unveil this statue, we get to see a statue of Jimmy Carter. At the bottom of this Jimmy Carter statue, there is a quote, and it says, "Malaise forever." Now, this is directly in our faces because malaise means a persistent feeling of unease or illness. And it really kind of reminds me of long COVID cases.
Yeah, and didn't you have a little run-in with COVID?
I did. I contracted COVID in the winter of 2020. I lost my sense of smell and sense of taste. The sense of taste has come back somewhat, but I still have anosmia. I still haven't gotten the full range of my nose back. And it's been about 3 years. So it kind of feels like malaise forever.
Jeez. Yeah, I fortunately didn't ever get COVID. I think it's maybe because I'm a kung flu fighter, but I know a lot of people that have gone through that. Now, with the malaise forever sign that was on that Jimmy Carter statue, that also meant something else to me. In 1979, Jimmy Carter gave a speech, and he felt like he had to because of the current state of mind, the current morale of the country. The people at that time did not believe that the country was fighting for them. Instead, they believed that the country was fighting for themselves and their own interests. At that time, Americans weren't willing to save for the future, and that's probably because they didn't believe there was going to be one. And most of the people, 2/3 of the country, didn't even vote.
Wow, it seems like they had some really low morale. And I bet you it was caused by the energy crisis that was happening at that time. There was a fuel embargo from the Middle East that was really affecting everybody at that time. Everybody in the United States was affected by that in 1979.
So how does that tie into what we're talking about, what we're researching? That speech, there was basically the recognition that something needed to be done to gain back the favor of the people and become kind of the hero once again. Guys, this is a play straight out of Sun Tzu, the Book of War. First, you think about the problem, but before you implement the problem, already have the solution in hand. When COVID came out, the efficiency at which certain responses happened, including the vaccine coming out so quickly, well, that was a pretty good way to get back in the good graces of people, especially during that time when they were so easily suggestible. They were scared. This is something that they hadn't experienced before.
Yeah, and as much as I question this now, when I first heard about COVID, I really wasn't sure what we were dealing with, and I'm gonna tell you, I wore a mask and I kind of went along with it for a little while in the beginning because, like I said, we were all scared and we didn't know what was happening. I caught it anyway.
Jeez.
I tried though, I really did.
So that's going to bring us to the second rabbit hole we're going to tumble down. So if we're talking about the need for some people in power to reassure and regain control of the people who aren't, then why? Why would that even be a part of this? Well, if the Simpsons are predicting these things, if Matt Groening somehow bought the cauldron from Nostradamus and is working that at night behind closed doors or by some other means, if it isn't the prediction component, then maybe it's orders. And maybe the Simpsons are the delivery method.
Yeah, you know what? There's way too much in this episode for it to be prophetic. I mean, I believe in the supernatural and strange things happening, but this is too much. It's way too much for even a coincidence at this point.
As we were doing our research and the clues were piling up supporting the COVID prediction, clues started piling up about who may be receiving these orders or giving them. So we're going to back up all the way to the beginning of the episode. And right at the intro, you actually found something right away.
Yeah, I noticed something really strange about this flag in front of the school that Bart attends. As they're zooming into the window to see the classic opening of him writing something on the chalkboard, I noticed that the flag was not an American flag, that it was something that was red and white. It actually looked like a white rag with a white red line across in both directions. And I immediately recognized this as the flag of St. George. Now, the flag of St. George is flown over the second oldest lodge in the Masonic district of the Eastern Archipelago. It comprises Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. And you happened to actually notice what Bart was writing on the board.
Yeah, so as Bart was writing on the chalkboard like he normally does, he gets in trouble. He was writing, "I do not have diplomatic immunity." So those two things, the flag of St. George, I do not have diplomatic immunity. Let's go back to St. George. So who was St. George? What was he the patron saint of?
Classically, St. George is associated with England, even though St. George is not English. He was martyred sometime in 326, I don't even know, ADE? Sometime during Roman times. But he was martyred in Palestine. And he is associated with Masonic lodges, because Masonic lodges actually started in England. But having the second oldest lodge that's still running be in Asia, to me that's kind of significant.
It is. And the other thing that's kind of crazy about St. George being part of this particular episode is that St. George was the saint that was called upon to when there was something that had to do with a plague.
Oh, right. He was there. You would pray to him to ward off plagues, and he was also the patron saint of soldiers, knights, and warriors.
So that was pretty crazy when we found that out. I mean, it's one thing to have maybe some similarities, but again, I don't believe in coincidence, and this is just a little bit too in the forefront. It's right in your face. Yeah,
as we continue, you're going to see that this is kind of in your face stuff.
So as far as the I don't have diplomatic immunity that Bart was writing, so if someone was given orders and they didn't really want to do it, maybe this was a way to let them know they didn't have a choice.
Perhaps they were blackmailing this individual into doing something that they didn't want to do.
Sounds like another conspiracy we need to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get more into that a little bit later.
So, as we're going through the next part, the screen is scrolling from left to right. There's a picture, and on the picture, it says, "I can't believe they invented it."
Right. Another in-your-face clue, perhaps pointing to a laboratory in a certain city of Wuhan, China.
Wink, wink, China. Nudge, nudge. So after you see that picture, it goes to the TV show, and the name of the TV show is I Can't Believe They Invented It. And it was a show, infomercial type of thing that was full of the dumbest inventions you could possibly imagine.
Like the microwave floating on the water.
And the juicer that Homer and a lot of people ended up buying, and that this is how they got the Osaka flu.
It was called the juice loosener.
And deeper down the rabbit hole we go. So if we're talking about Masonic connection, right? If you guys know anything about the Masons, you know they're all about their symbology. And a lot of times when you see imagery that they're trying to represent as themselves, on the floors particularly, you'll see a lot of the white and black checkerboard pattern. Mm-hmm. That is classic Mason.
Classic.
So at 3 minutes 8 seconds into the episode, as Homer is ordering his juicer, we see a checker pattern first on his face and then down on the phone cord. Now this checker pattern kind of glitchiness appears on a few different surfaces throughout the episode. But was that kind of a reference for a phone call made or a phone call to make? Why was that there? So that's something that we were kind of thinking about. As it goes, the bus driver, as he's trying to catch some rays, I see it on his necklace. I don't know if the significance of the shape of the necklace he was wearing had anything to do with it, but why again do we see that checker pattern? And then finally, at the grocery store, when Marge, or at the Quickie Mart rather, when Marge is trying to get everything together, she's walking down the aisle, and then we see that checker pattern all over her. And it makes me think, did they need a martyr? Why was Marge painted with that kind of symbology, if not to be the fall guy?
Yeah, she even goes to jail in this episode, which I never thought she would do. She does 30 days in prison for stealing a bottle of bourbon, shoplifting.
And as it's painted, it seemed like an honest mistake.
Right, like she didn't actually know that she was doing anything wrong until she was confronted by the police, and she admitted, no, I didn't actually pay for this.
All right, babe, so serious question. Did Fauci have blue hair?
it's gray. But I don't know. He got a lot of slack. He never went to jail. No one went to jail over this, but he definitely seemed like the fall guy. He was the guy that everybody saw. He was the chief medical advisor for the White House, and he was on the front lines every day answering questions and just being inundated with people that were pretty angry about the whole situation. So, Principal Skinner, I want to go back to that. I was talking about how Principal Skinner and his elderly mother were in one particular scene. He brings her one of the juicers. He ordered it for her. And he even mentions, hey, mother, get ready to give me a super special hug. I don't know why that stuck out to me, how we were being told not to hug senior citizens.
Word of the day, social distancing.
Social distancing. So he opens this package with his mother there, and as I was watching this scene, I noticed in the background there was a clock. Now, the clock itself doesn't really stand out. It's in the background, but it's a little muted. But what I did notice is that the time on the clock reads 4:40. And I feel like that's very significant. 4:40 is really significant to the Masons. It's also significant to the Illuminati, which, I mean, disclaimer, not sure if they're real or not, but moving on. How do you feel about the 4:40 connection on the clock? I really feel like that was significant.
Yeah, I noticed that right away. We both kind of paused. We were doing our own branch of research on that. And it was crazy. Again, one of the times I said it's crazy. It was crazy when I saw that 440 million vaccines were distributed within the first year. And why was that the significant number that I saw on these news releases?
Yeah, and a lot of Masonic lodges are numbered 440. I believe there's a 440 lodge in every state, including some of their European locations.
Now, I have a very musical background as well, and so 440 means something to me. You guitarists know exactly what I'm talking about when you tune your guitar to standard tuning. So, the music we used to listen to previous to 1953 was tuned to 432 hertz. That's a natural resonance. It was changed, and world leaders decided to agree that it should be changed to a separated, different standard tuning at 440 hertz.
Now, why they decided to have an entire meeting and decide the whole world, the Western world anyway, was going to start, changing their music to 440? I don't know. It doesn't seem like something that world leaders should have meetings about. It just seems like it would be preference, right?
Maybe we have an episode on that one.
Yeah, that's a different rabbit hole. So, 10 minutes and 21 seconds. Homer has decided to go back and ask the Quickie Mart for some leniency on his wife, as she didn't really know that she was shoplifting. She was really, tired and busy, and Apu says something very interesting. He says, it is the policy of the Quickie Mart and its parent corporation, Nordyne Defense Dynamics, to prosecute shoplifters to the fullest extent of the law.
Now, this part, I have to talk about it. It has nothing to do with the COVID prediction. It just has to do with the ruthlessness of the writers for The Simpsons. Homer was trying to plead for mercy and ask if they would drop the charges. And Apu looked him dead in the eyes and said, "We're going to put that bitch on ice." That was a Punjabi below the belt. I just have to say that. For the record, guys, that long pause was my wife looking at me, mouth open, eyes wide, wondering if I could even get away with saying that. So we're going to post it, and if I get in trouble, I'm sorry. It wasn't a racial comment. I actually have Punjabi friends. So disclaimer, Black Lives Matter, Gray Lives Matter. Oh, yeah, aliens.
Oh, aliens.
Back on track, and we digress. So, Nordyne Defense Dynamics. They're known for certain things, but you actually noticed something looking up like the history of that company, what that company was.
Yeah, that company has set up business in 3 different countries. One of those countries being Singapore. They closed down there, and then they opened up again in Los Angeles and Texas in 2019.
And they specialize in drones, surveillance, AI security, and encryption. Encryption was the one that kind of hit me between the eyes with the truth. If you need to communicate with somebody, you'll give them like a little heads up, a page, if you will, for those of you old enough that used to have beepers, right?
Or an episode of The Simpsons.
But when you really need to disseminate the specifics, the information, potentially incriminating information, you need to make sure you can do that safely. And Nordyne Defense Dynamics would be a great platform to make sure that your information encrypted is received and only by the eyes that need to receive it.
For sure. It's a strange coincidence. It's also very strange to mention the entire name of the company in passing.
Right. So we're not saying one way or another. We try to keep an open mind in that regard. I certainly know which way that I'm feeling, and we don't want to push you guys in any of those directions. Just take the information that we've given, educate yourselves. It's your responsibility. And if you come to the same conclusions we do, whew.
Yeah. And we'd like to hear about any conclusions that you have on this episode. We have a TikTok page as well as a YouTube page. And we have an email link on that TikTok page. So if you want to follow us on TikTok, we are in plain sight. We're also on YouTube. Don't forget to like and follow on all the platforms that we record on.
Absolutely. And another thing, you guys certainly have the time and ability to have done research, if you're anything like me, for years and years. So if you want to make suggestions on certain rabbit holes you want us to tumble down, by all means. And if we don't know one way or the other, we certainly don't want to make up any answers. But yeah, this has been an excellent topic, I think, for us to start. I know at first we were just going to have The Simpsons predicting the future as one episode, but as we started to really dive into it...
There's way too much here.
This is just one episode of so many, and we're not going to do them all back to back again. This is a series, guys, and we don't want to bore you with the same topics, but we're certainly going to circle back to this a few times and go over some other crazy things that we've been finding out about The Simpsons and Matt Groening.
Yeah, and as always, guys, question everything.